Hey, welcome back to another episode of Common Knowledge, where I take a look at 10 random common Magic the Gathering cards, tell you if they're any good in the proper format or not, and sometimes we do a bonus card or two. Let's start with today, see what we get. We'll start with Underworld Charger, which is 2 and a black for a 3/3 Nightmare Horse that cannot block, and it also has Escape for 4 and a black. You exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. To escape, that means you may cast this card from your graveyard for its escape cost. And it also says this creature escapes with 2+1/+1 counters on it. All right. This is, I think my problem is that just recently, and well, I guess recently for me, not necessarily for you, because I'm recording some of these so far in advance, but I recently went through all the Lorwyn Eclipsed commons. And that video was great. Go check out that if you want to look at 2.5 hours of me talking about Lorwyn Eclipse commons, which I had a great time with. But I think I'm still like a little limited pilled right now, where I'm just thinking about how, oh, this would have been cool and limited. I can see, and I got to be thinking about just straight Pauper now. And so this card is not very good in Pauper. A 3-mana 3/3 that can eventually become a 5-mana 5/5. Can't block. That's not really the best. In limited, I'm like, ooh, you kind of get a little card advantage. You get like a second card eventually. It works in the early mid game. It works in the late game. This is Pauper. We don't we don't care. We don't care about that. So this gets a pretty bad score. I'm gonna say this is like a 1.5. Nothing really to write home about, other than the art, which looks awesome. Good job, Johan Boden. Bowden. I think it's Bowden. Phyrexian Slayer is a classic Magic the Gathering card. It's 3 and a black for a 2/2 Phyrexian minion with flying. And whenever this creature becomes blocked by a white creature, destroy that creature. It cannot be regenerated. Originally / only from Invasion, you can get this for less than a dime. And it's not very good. it's not particularly good. It is... it's like a cockatrice, but only for white creatures, and that's, or I guess like a basilisk. Probably basilisk people probably know more than cockatrice, but I like a good cockatrice. We're never going to see it here because that's a rare card, but anyway, I love the art on this one too. Good job, Sam Wood. I like Phyrexians, old and new, and I really like the kind of flavor that goes along with this, fighting something that's a white and having advantages over white creatures. But also the issue with this is a couple fold. One, you're paying 4 mana for a 2/2 flyer. That's not great. Two, it's only when this becomes blocked by a white creature, not when you block. So you don't even get the advantage of having like a death touch against white creatures. And second and third, I guess. Well, actually, no, it would go through. You don't have to go to you don't do damage. It just says whenever it becomes blocked by a white creature. So I guess it gets a little bit of the benefit there because it just won't die in combat to that. It's almost like it has first strike death touch only against white creatures. And that can be cool. But where do you play that? Do you play this as a sideboard piece that is only against white weenie? Probably not. Taking out one white creature a turn is not really that big of a deal, and this thing flies, so you're going to miss most of the stuff on the ground that your opponent's going to be able to block with. And when they do block, they're just going to block with those little 1/1 flyers from Battle Screech. It's not really that great. It was probably pretty cool in Invasion's time, where you could get a little bit more use out of that. Of that ability, but here in Pauper in 2026, nah. This ends up being like a 1.2. It just costs too much for what it is, and what it is isn't very good to begin with. Next card is a champion, or not champions, Betrayers of Kamigawa card. Still, I'm excited though. Skullmane Baku is 3 and double black for a 2/1 spirit. Whenever you cast a spirit or arcane spell, you may put a key counter on this creature. Then for 1 and tapping this creature, you can remove X key counters from this creature, and target creature gets -X until end of turn. Not really very good. like most Kamigawa cards, this is a creature that is very overcosted. 5 mana for a 2/1 is just asking to be uh, electricity or needle drop, or there's lava darted. There's all sorts of ways to kill this thing, in ways that the mana investment that you put into it, you are definitely not getting back out of it, and that sucks. Now, it is also a removal spell, a repeatable removal spell, and that's pretty interesting. You can get around indestructible creatures because it gives -X instead of trying to destroy things. And that seems nice. Like, those are all good things, right? Okay, now we're talking. But we're also not talking because you have to be in a dedicated spirits deck or an arcane deck, but both of those are very impractical. You're not going to play this. The creature itself costs way too much to get in here. As somebody who has a Kamigawa block limited Pauper deck that is all about spirits, I don't play this in that deck either. That deck is fully red green. It does play the Bakus. It plays the red one and the green one. But even in a deck that is very dedicated to playing Kamigawa spirits and arcane spells, I still don't play this card. It's as simple as that. It's just not very good. I think honestly, I got to give this a 1. It is so much cost to get it on the table in the first place, and then you have to continue playing more spells. It's pretty bad. It's really pretty bad. I think a 1 is pretty fair for that one, but I love it. I love it because it's Kamigawa. Ophidian is 2 and a blue for a 1/3 snake. Whenever this creature attacks and isn't blocked, you may draw a card. If you do, this creature assigns no combat damage this turn. What a classic card. Originally from Weatherlight. Yeah, originally from Weatherlight. It's kept the same art this whole time. Ophidian, man. Ophidian's not good anymore. But you hear a lot of people talk about Ophidian effects. And when they're saying an Ophidian effect, it is mostly, if this creature deals combat damage, you draw a card. And you see a lot of that in blue. And we mostly call those Ophidian effects, even though original Ophidian, as you just read here, is not exactly worded that way. It doesn't quite work in the same sense, but it is still drawing you cards. And 1/3 is not the worst body for something like this. 1/3 blocks a lot of stuff, and when you do attack, your opponent isn't, they're not as incentivized to block this thing, knowing that, it's just 1 damage. So they tend, well, I wouldn't say they tend not to block, because also just being a 1/3, it's pretty easy to block and bounce your creatures off. And I don't know. Ophidian is not anywhere where it needs to be playable in pretty much any format. But I don't really think it finds a home in Pauper. It is, though, a classic card that deserves a little respect. And I guess just to give it the respect, I will give it a 1.3. But it probably doesn't really deserve that. I do want to put this in a cube, though. I'm gonna make a note that I would like to get a copy of Ophidian just to have it. Just that original Weatherlight version, which looks real nice. Let's keep on going. Guidelight Optimizer is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 artifact creature robot. You can tap it to add blue and spend this mana only to cast an artifact spell or activate an ability. From Aetherdrift, 4 cents. 4 cents for this guy. And I don't think he's too bad. I really don't. The problem with most of these cards is that I will just go and say you should, if you want to play those, play Oaken Siren. Same mana cost, but now you get a flying vigilant guy. 1/2 instead of 2/1. That might matter to you, but flying and vigilance is so good. Now, this one does say that when you tap for blue, it's for an artifact spell or activate an ability of an artifact source. And this one just says activate an ability. So, you could spend this on an artifact spell, but it could be on anything's ability. And, this was Aetherdrift, so it was thinking about exhaust abilities and some of those other ones there that had activated abilities. And that's interesting. You could probably do something more with that. But as like a 2 mana dork in blue, we're starting to get more and more of those recently. And I think this is a pretty decent one. Again, I would still go with Oaken Siren, but I don't think this guy's too terrible. I'll give him like a 2.6. What do we got next? Oh, we've done Troublemaker Oof, haven't we? I'm pretty sure we've done Troublemaker Oof before. Really good card, really good sideboard card in a lot of different green decks. Exiling artifacts or enchantments is huge, especially exiling artifacts. You can get rid of those artifact lands. This is this, like I said, goes in a ton of sideboards for decks that have any sort of green in them at all. I've got it in Jund Wildfire, but this is big card, good card. I'd give it a pretty good score. I don't remember what I gave it the last time, but this gets like a 6 or something. But we've already done it before, so we'll just kind of skip through. To Martyr of Dusk, which is 1 and a white for a 2/1 vampire soldier. When this creature dies, you create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. It's almost good. Like it's doing like a Doom Traveler impression, Infestation Sage, that kind of thing. And those are useful for your black based sacrifice deck. Sometimes those are Orzhov. Most of the times they're just mono black. And this guy's like, okay, well, what if you had a little bit more power on the original creature, and then the creature that you get afterward, the token, has lifelink? That could be kind of cool too. It could be, but it's not all that great. Paying that extra mana for this effect. Excuse me, paying that extra mana for this effect is just it's probably a little too slow. It's a little slower than you want it to be. Because just imagine, when you have 2 mana, what if you got to play 2 Infestation Sages in a turn instead of 1 Martyr of Dusk? That just, the black sacrifice decks or the black base sacrifice decks are going to want to play that 10 out of 10 times over Martyr of Dusk. Still, an interesting little card. Not too terrible. I'll give it like a 2.3. And keep on going. Sunder the Gateway is 1 and a white for a sorcery that says choose 1. Either you can destroy target non-token artifact or enchantment an opponent controls, and you incubate 2, which means you create an incubator token with 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and it has 2 to transform this token, and it'll transform that token into a 0/0 Phyrexian artifact creature. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Or you can incubate 2 and then transform an incubator token you control. All right, I think this is a totally fine card. Probably not quite strong enough for Pauper, but it's really close, honestly. Okay, what you got here is a disenchant at sorcery speed. Doesn't sound amazing, but I like the gravy that goes on here. So this incubating 2, this is something that came in March of the Machine. Did it come in March of the Machine, or was it in Phyrexia All Be One first? Can't remember, but it's it's a Phyrexian kind of ability. The incubator token is just an artifact token that hangs out on the battlefield, which can be good if you are in any sort of affinity style deck or you need to sacrifice artifacts for something. It's a nice little artifact that just sits there and is able to strategize or synergize into any of those strategies. Not too bad. But these incubator tokens, they all have that text, the 2 to transform this token, and whatever you've incubated it for will be the number of +1/+1 counters on the artifact. So it goes from just being an artifact with counters on it to being a 0/0 creature with counters on it. So now it's a 2/2. In this case, it's a 2/2 Phyrexian artifact creature. Not too bad. For 2 mana, you just get the going rate for a 2/2. Perfectly fine. And this card can also, for the 2 mana that you paid into it originally, can just get you a 2/2 creature. Okay, sometimes you'll want that, but sometimes you don't mind paying for the disenchant that then gets you that ability to maybe get that creature a little bit later. I think this is solid. I really do. I think this is a solid little card. Problem is, we just have so many other pretty good disenchants or white removal pieces that also have some extra gravy. When are you going to play this over playing a Thraben Charm? When are you going to play this over playing a Destroy Evil? When are you going to play this versus a Spectacular Tactics from Spider-Man? There's lots of these kinds of 2 mana white spells that do things, that just do things. And I think the things that those other ones do are a little bit better than the things this one does. I still like this card. I'd still give it something like a 3.3, but I understand that it's not quite there anymore, and it hasn't even been out all that long, and it's already been kind of lost in the shuffle. Heart Warden is 1 and a green for a 1/1 elf druid. It taps for green, or you can pay 2 and sacrifice this creature to draw a card. It's not a terrible elf, but it's an elf, and elf decks don't want this because they have much faster elves. Just so many better, faster, more useful elves in that deck, and Heart Warden doesn't go anywhere else. That's the only deck that would want it, and it's got plenty of other stuff to play over this. It's, a halfway decent mana dork. I like that it can sacrifice itself to draw a card. That's pretty cool. But no deck really wants this, and that's a little too bad. I'll give it like a 1.6 because it does have some utility, but never really gets played. Springjack Knight is a Lorwyn card. Yeah. Springjack Knight's 2 and a white for a 2/1 Kithkin Knight. Whenever this creature attacks, clash with an opponent. If you win, target creature gains double strike until end of turn. What is clash, you might ask? Well, clash, each clashing player reveals the top card of the library and then puts that card on their choice of the top or bottom of the library. A player wins if their card had a greater mana value. Okay. In Lorwyn, like when you played this card, you're playing Kithkin. Kithkin are generally not very big creatures that have big mana costs. So when you clash, you want to have big mana costs. That's how you win the clash. So you weren't winning clashes too often with with Kithkin. I guess there are some giants in Lorwyn that also synergized halfway decently with Kithkin. So maybe you have some of those giant spells that would have worked in more of like the limited environment. In Pauper, I'd say this is honestly gotten even worse. This card by itself is not particularly great. The idea of getting double strike on your 2/1 is okay, but to already have paid 3 mana for it and then to have the 50-50 shot to miss, and also you're giving your opponent a bit of card selection, you're kind of just allowing them to scry if they wanted to. And you can as well, obviously, but why do you want to give your opponent that ability? And also your opponent just might end up having higher mana cost things than you. If they're playing a Tron deck that is playing big spells like that, or a ramp deck, like a Gruul ramp deck that's playing boarding party and things like that, you're just not going to win those clashes very often. And even when you do, did it really make all that much of a difference in your 2/1 for your 2/1 that has double strike now for 1 turn? I don't really think it does. Clash is a cute ability. We've seen Clash work in commander decks. They've made some fun commanders outside of Lorwyn that specifically work with Clash that are kind of fun. But I don't think this is one of the best mechanics from Lorwyn, and you can tell they kind of think so too, because we didn't really get Clash to come back in Lorwyn Eclipse, at least not as like a main mechanic. It might be in there as like a cameo mechanic, but yeah, it's not all that popular, and I don't think this is a very good card to show off the strength of Clash. Let's give it a 1.7. Move on to what potentially is our final card of the day. It will not be, though, because I'm definitely going to do a little bit more than this. Onake Ogre is originally from Core Set 2019. It's 2 and a red for a 4/2 Ogre Warrior. And that's all it is. That's pretty bad, isn't it? That's pretty bad. I mean, you are getting Hill Giant total stats. Hill Giant's a 3/3. This is a 4/2. And Hill Giant costs 4. So you're getting a bit of a deal. 4 power for 3 mana is not terrible, but on a vanilla creature that does nothing else, and the 2 toughness means this thing gets traded with all the time. It's not very good. I think this is just above a 1, I suppose. Let's give it a 1.2 and get a bonus card here. Maybe something that does a little something more interesting. Brood Birthing is 1 and a red for a sorcery. If you control an Eldrazi spawn, create 3/0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens. They have sacrificed this token to add a colorless. Otherwise, create 1 of those tokens. This is a pretty good card. Mostly because of Modern Horizons 3, we have lots of things that will make Eldrazi spawns, right? They're spawns, not scions. Scions are the 1/1s. Spawns are the 0/1s. So let me just see. Eldrazi Repurposer. Yeah, those are make spawns. Those make spawns. Those are the important ones. So I'd say this is a pretty decent card if you're going to be building into kind of specifically one Eldrazi deck, and it is mostly like an Eldrazi ramp deck, but it's also kind of like an Eldrazi Impact Tremors deck. So if you play Impact Tremors or another card that when a creature enters, it deals a damage to an opponent, this is pretty good for that because you can get 3 guys on the table at one time, 3 pings, and now you also have 3. Like it's a ritual, but like a ritual ramp, and that can get you up to your, I don't know, your Writhing Chrysalis, or if you get enough of them, up to your Ulamog's Crusher. And it's not a bad deck. It's not a bad little deck. It's another red-green deck that kind of ramps a lot. And you see other red-green decks that ramp a lot that also do well. But I think this is an interesting take on that kind of deck. And this card goes in there and does pretty solidly in it. This is a cool thing. And, even if you don't have the Eldrazi spawn, it does at least make one of those tokens. So the next one of these you play has the chance to do more. But with Malevolent Rumble and Eldrazi Repurposer and Writhing Chrysalis, there's so many ways of getting Eldrazi spawns out on the table to begin. Nest Invader is another one. That's a really cheap one that can start play. There's lots of ways to get Eldrazi spawn tokens on the battlefield to begin with, and then this just puts you into overdrive. It's not bad. It's not bad. Again, like I said, it really kind of only goes in the one deck, but it goes in that one deck really well. Really, really well. So I think we can give this a 5.9, I think. 5.9. And that is where we will end today. Thanks so much for joining me. We will see you next time.